a message that would sustain and advance church theology and exegesis. This aggressive rewriting of biblical texts has had a remarkable impact on Christians throughout the world who unhesitatingly embrace these twisted translations. So let's take a look at Hebrews 10:5. Hebrews 10:5. Quoting from Psalm 40, we saw a couple of days back the messianic significance of the psalm. As the psalmist gets the great revelation, you don't want, it's not the offerings you want. You want me. You want my life, wholly dedicated, completely dedicated. But then, of course, his own sins overwhelm him. He falls short. It's Messiah who comes into the world that is the ultimate fulfillment of the text and is the very one to whom the sacrifice is pointed, life for life, an innocent victim for the guilty. Hebrews 10:5, therefore when Messiah came into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. With burnt offerings and sin offerings you were not pleased. And I said, here I am. It is written about me in the scroll. I have come to do your will, O God. First he said, sacrifices and offerings, burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not desire, nor were you pleased with them, although the law required them to be made. Then he said, here am I have come to do your will. He sets aside the first to establish the second, and by that will we have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus the Messiah once and for all. So what's the big issue there? Well, those words, a body you prepared for me. The Hebrew is oznayim karitali, which could mean ears, literally ears you have dug out for me. Some would translate it, you've pierced my ears, meaning dedication to you. It would be a little bit unusual way to say it. It's possible. Could mean you dug out, bore out so that I could clearly hear. If you'll read 5 different Jewish commentaries, 5 different Jewish translations, you'll see that they're approximating these words because it's just a little difficult to know exactly what the Hebrew was saying. The overall sense is completely clear. I understand this, and you want me. The Septuagint translated with a body you prepared me. How did they come to that? Some refer to it as metonymy or pars pro toto. These are phrases that are used, the part for the whole. In other words, they understood it was talking about having willing, open ears, meaning surrender, sacrifice, willingness to give oneself, and hence they took the part for the whole. Surrendered ears, a whole body, a whole life. That was their deduction. Whether you think it's a good deduction or not, that was their deduction. And Hebrews did not erase what was written in the Hebrew text. Writing in Greek to a Greek-speaking audience whose Bible, whose Jewish Bible would be the Septuagint, and if they're going to look up a verse, that's where they're going to look it up. He quoted from the Septuagint. That's all. And his big point, he doesn't major in that. He makes passing reference to the body of Jesus the Messiah. But his big point is, you put aside sacrifices and offerings with, here I am, I've come to do your will. He doesn't major on this. There would have been no problem if the Septuagint said, my ears you've opened up. His point stands exactly the same. That with the coming of the one who says, here I am, I come to do your will, it's written to me in the scroll, that now replaces the first. Instead of sacrifices and offerings, you have me. And this is ultimately the voice of the Messiah speaking through the psalm. Now here's what makes this more amazing. It's according to Rabbi Singer, some anti-missionaries, the Septuagint of everything outside of the Torah was actually translated by the church. So in other words, they said, all right, that's not in your Bible? Watch this. It doesn't say in your Bible that you have to go to Texas to be saved. Give me your Bible. Scratch it out right there. See, it's written. I mean, that's actually what they're accused of doing. That because it wasn't written in the Bible, they now rewrote it, and then they said, see, there it is. Again, it's mind-boggling that anyone could think that this happened. But not only so, all the evidence that we have indicates that these books were translated into Greek by various Jewish scholars before the writing of the New Covenant. And therefore, when they're quoting it, they're just quoting from a Jewish translation of their day. It'd be like you're up here explaining a point, and you say, here, let me read from the Stone translation. It's this Orthodox Jewish translation. You say, that says it, that conveys what I'm trying to say. and you read it there. And then centuries later, someone says, you twisted that, you rewrote that thing because they would have never written it. I mean, that's the type of argument that, sadly, people actually get swayed by. So the New Testament authors, they took an eraser and they erased what was written in the biblical text, and they changed. And not only did they change it in a passage where they didn't even make a point about it. They changed it in a passage that had nothing to do. Jesus was not born in Bethlehem. He was born in Dallas, Texas. They're going to rewrite that, but then we're not even going to dwell on that point. Sometimes words fail in terms of, you hate to even have to deal with the objection, but because it's raised and people get swayed by it, we have to. So, one of my friends, a Messianic Jewish friend in Australia, has been working for years and years and years on issues relative to the Septuagint with some top Septuagint scholars, and is just now finishing his doctoral thesis on a certain portion of Ezekiel in various Septuagint manuscripts and how it reflects on Jewish interpretation of the book of Ezekiel from the Hebrew, etc. It's a meticulous, carefully done study. And I just shot him this note. I said, isn't this amazing, this claim that the Septuagint of everything outside of Torah was not translated until New Testament times, and it was done, quote, by Christians. So he just shot me a little note. The primary Septuagint scholars all date Isaiah as translated before Jeremiah and Ezekiel. All primary Septuagint scholars say Septuagint was translated before New Testament times. Ezekiel, for instance, was translated around 230 to 165 BCE. And now remember, Isaiah was translated before Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and here he's saying the best evidence after meticulous study is that Ezekiel was translated around 230 to 165 BCE. So roughly 200 years before Jesus. And then he starts getting into specific details. Papyrus 967, the earliest Septuagint manuscript, has a different chapter order. Chapter 37 follows 39, and as mine is 3623c to 38. It most likely represents the Old Greek, just as Papyrus 967 does for Daniel. After this time, some groups changed the chapter in order to the received text and inserted 3623c to 38. He goes through this whole thing to say that you can actually date when the thing was translated and what the process was, and you can also see the type of Greek that was used and when it most reflects and how the thing unfolds, etc., etc. All this shows that there was a Greek translation for Ezekiel prior to New Testament times. Similar intratextual evidence can be produced for other books. When the New Testament authors were quoting from the Septuagint, they were quoting from a widely used Jewish translation of their day. Even though the later rabbis only sanctioned in a certain way the 5 books of Moses into Greek, we know from historical attestation, from document evidence, and other witnesses that the entire Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek before the time of Yeshua. So these authors, Jewish authors, sometimes writing to Jewish recipients, Greek-speaking, they quote from the Bible, they're going to look up. There was no deceit, there was no fraud, there was no stunning mistranslation conspiracy. That's easily resolved. Let's look at a couple of other passages. Matthew 23:35. Matthew 23:35. And so upon you, this is Yeshua speaking, will come all the righteous